No secret, no doubt, I love the physical attack phase in Battletech. Tactically getting up there, these massive, massive war machines, and engaging in close combat, settling things in martial glory. And this goes way back through many different wargaming systems that I evolve and play and enjoy, settling it in the field on the tabletop. We'll put aside that player personality for a moment. This is building on a couple of questions, some feedback, and as always, I'm going to turn it over to you guys in the comments. Dealing with the physical attack phase in Battletech, how do we prevent it? What are some of the ideas? What's that checklist that we can build to stay out of getting attacked? And I just want to briefly mention, kind of as a foundation for those of you new to Battletech, we've discussed the benefits of the physical attack phase, the tactica, and how to do it. But it's not quite this simple, but it is this simple. Essentially, the tonnage of your mech is multiplied, and if you make contact, if you hit, instead of rolling on the full hit location chart, you roll on a specialized hit location chart for punching, and you have a 1 in 6 chance of smashing the head. This is especially attractive if you're an assault mech, a heavy mech, and even if you don't just knock the head clean off for some reason. Even if you're up there as a Stinger or a Wasp trying to punch an Atlas, don't ask why for now, you would potentially force a consciousness check. You never know, right? Wargaming 101, anytime you roll dice, crazy stuff can happen, so I'm going to try and make you roll as much dice as you possibly can. So that's the value. That's the tactica. And we've covered that more in the Battletech playlist. So how do we prevent it? Well, a lot of it depends, before we get into mechs and some of the tactica, physically. And there's no right or wrong to this. Physically, what are you playing on? One of the reasons why we play Battletech on hex maps, portability. It's easy to fold up. It's easy to roll out. It's easy to play. In terms of terrain, line of sight, blocking, movement, facing, all of that is reduced to quick calculations. Very, very tight, very, very rule-centric. And based on that nature, though, the average hex map is a smaller size. So this way, you are forced to commit. It almost artificially speeds up the game. A great parallel example, and I'm a massive fan of X-Wing miniatures. The reason why the standard playmat is so small is because it forces you to dogfight. Otherwise, if we played on the floor, we would be like zipping from one room to the other, or I would just be flying away as I have a turret turned and shooting you. It forces you into the mix. So hex maps force you into the mix. It's going to be a little bit harder to stay away from the physical attack phase on a hex map, unless you have like 3 or 4 laid out. If we switch over to playing on a traditional wargaming table or very, very large hex map, now you have places to move. You can run, you can gun, you can hide, you can stay out of range. It becomes a little bit more challenging to get into the physical attack phase. We're going to use that to our advantage potentially. And then, of course, the mission really dictates everything. If the mission is, look, at the end of 10 turns, whoever's in the center controlling that mission objective, whoever has the most surviving tonnage in there takes the field, then it's going to come down to physical attacks. So sometimes based on the mission, I say this because you can't avoid them. All right, positioning. Generally speaking, you want to try and navigate towards the center-ish area of the table. This is where you want the action to begin to happen, modified a little bit by cover. If you can be a little bit center right and be in cover, or have level 1 obscuring the lower part of your mech, absolutely. We're not going to hang out dead center in the middle. That's not what I'm saying. But by being in the center of the table, you have a place to go. Let's look at example. Let's pick 2 mechs. First 2 mechs that comes to Fritz's mind. You have an Atlas and I have an Archer. So if my Archer is parked on the back field, on my deployment zone, my hex map table edge, and I wait for you to approach to get into long range missile range. Now, yeah, you're going to soak me with your 20. I'm going to be hitting you as soon as you're in range. But if I hit you in range, And then as you close and get closer, by the time you get close enough to me, I physically have nowhere to go. I'm backed up against the table edge, or worse, in some cases, castling up. Castling up in wargaming is where the table that you're playing on or the map, you're physically in that corner, left or right corner. By having the boundaries cut off, you channel your opponent into one very, very narrow area. There are times to castle up. There are certain lists that want to castle up. But in this example, if I get caught on my table edge or I get caught up on the castle, I've got nowhere to go. At the start of the game, if I aggressively move that archer to the center of the table, you're going to be moving up. As soon as you're in range, I'm going to be shooting at you. You're going to be shooting at me. But if you're still aggressive moving forward, I can start backpedaling. I can start walking backwards. Now, depending on the mech, right, I can walk backwards. I can't run. You can walk or run. Depending on the tonnage and depending on the terrain, you might catch up to me. But at least it'll take a few turns to catch up to me. And of course, I'll be soaking you with my missiles, with my lasers, whatever weapons that I have. So the first thing is to be aware, not where the game starts, but where the game is going. Do you potentially have an out? And part of this too is even when you have an out, recognizing the terrain. One of the new Catalyst maps has nice placement of mountains. It's kind of got peaks and valleys. So tactically looking at it, you see that, yes, you can climb up and down the hills and move through, but that's going to slow your movement tremendously. It's going to cost you. Even in the center, someone might catch up to you. So the first thing is give yourself somewhere to go. Be able to have some sort of out. The second way, and I believe in playing rules as written, because it's just that starting place. So I make that statement because house rules are a thing and house rules are important. So every gaming group is going to be different. But the old initiative sync, the idea that if I have my archer and you have your Atlas and I am forced to move that archer first and you're close, then I move and then you move and now we're base to base and we're going to be in the physical phase. So by having an initiative sync, that means by having more units, one of the ways you do this is infantry or cheap vehicles, low-cost units, because you can't always outnumber with mechs, and as soon as you take damage, you are going to lose units. So even if I have 5 mechs and you have 4 mechs, or if I've got 6 and you've got 4, I could take some losses because my mechs aren't as strong with the battle value. Maybe I went in with lights and mediums and you went in with heavies and assaults. So that attrition can bring me down where now, even if I win initiative, potentially I move first and you'll catch me. So having some infantry stands, and I've covered this in a previous podcast, vlog, picking yourself up a Karnov and at least 2 infantry stands, and while you're at it, 2 warriors. That's going to give you so much tactical flexibility. I give you permission right now to go out and purchase those models. You can use my name. Fantastic. Use my name as currency. No, they're not my models. Fritz is... You know how many times I've used, no, they're not mine. I'm borrowing them from Jawa Balls. It's legit. You got to do what you got to do in miniature collecting. But getting back on topic, having an initiative sync will save you so many times. And it could even be, I won't say that's kind of cheesy or beardy. You could go for the narrative. It's low battle value. Take a mobile HQ. Low battle value. The TAC op bonus in the initiative is a bonus right there, but also it's a kind of a double bonus because you get the bonus of the Tactica and you get the bonus of the unit. So there are ways that you can kind of stick to the narrative and pay a little bit of a fair tax rather than just let me just take the cheapest 4 infantry. I'm taking generic infantry and arming them with bolt action rifles just so I can get that initiative phase. You could do it. It's on there. But I prefer something a little more aggressive, heavy infantry, laser infantry, short-range infantry, jacked up. We're doing the whole Edge of Tomorrow thing. Jacked up in the Karnov, over the drop zone, doors open, guys go down, engage the mechs. That type of narrative is a little bit more attractive. But I do have a mobile HQ, and I play that. So how can you control the initiative so at least, going back to this Atlas versus Archer, at least you've got to move your Atlas first. So you move up. you get to base, then I move away. Probably what would happen in that case is you would move to the left or to the right, try to open up the firing arc based on my movement, so at least you could soak me a little bit with some damage and hopefully move to that aspect. The final way is you can't always prevent it, and then I'm going to open the Tactica up to you guys. Try your best not to let your mechs get isolated. I know easier said than done, and sometimes, I take risks all the time for glory, and sometimes the mission dictates where things are locked up for a few turns and you send your Jenner off or you send something fast off. So this isn't like a never do this. I can't accurately say that. That wouldn't quite be tactically fair. But avoid getting isolated with one mech, because this way, if you can't escape and you go to the physical phase, there's no consequences. If I have, let's say, that archer, and I'm trying to be realistic with the battle value, maybe I have a hunchback, or this was a bodyguard unit, or usually my bodyguarding type unit doesn't always have to be a mech, although mechs are sexier, but sometimes I'll take a demolisher tank and park that next to my missile boats. So this way, at least if you're going to get close and try and punk me, I've got multiple AC-20 platforms on a turret that you're going to have to answer for. So going back to this idea, if I have my archer and I've got, say, a hunchback or maybe even a centurion, right? Any type of mech, and for whatever reason I can't escape, if you get base to base, then at least I can have another mech when it's my initiative turn get behind you and at least get some rear armor on there. And then finally, the final, and then I am really turning it over to you guys. If you see that you can't escape, and this is true, I'm picking like the most extreme example, a wasp. You've got a wasp. Fritz, a wasp will always be able to escape. Not really. We were playing a mission where my entire force was decimated, but I had the bag. I had the goods. You had to literally pick up some sort of like lost tech data cell. My wasp had that, and now the exit off the board, I had to run through the gauntlet. I had to run through like 5 or 6 mechs, and I was literally running by mechs getting base to base, and I'm not even physically attacking because I only had one arm left, and that arm was holding the package, the bag, so to speak, the goods, the tech. It could happen. Lots of crazy stuff happens in BattleTech. That's why we love this game. But in exploring that, at least if you realize, regardless of the tonnage, going back to the extreme example of the Wasp or Stinger, realize, okay, I can't escape. I'm getting base to base with this Atlas. Don't fire the hand weapons. Punch back. Even if I'm going to cause minimal damage and I'm not going to, if I hit the head, it's not going to knock it off. I could maybe force a consciousness check on there. I could force some sort of check because it is a 1 in 6 chance. So at least make sure in the physical phase, avoid that temptation. Always go for, if you have a large laser or a weapon that you can fire with no minimums, always go for the 1 in 6 chance, even if you know it's only going to be 3 or 4 armor bubbles off the head and it's an assault mech. You never know, because it's still a mech warrior in there. And anytime you roll dice, crazy stuff can happen.